Today, we're going to go over an objection workshop covering phone script stuff, in-home stuff, recruiting stuff, a little bit of everything. And I think that's something myself and Easton get asked a ton about is, how do you overcome objections? And a lot of it's in the setup, but sometimes you do have to overcome objections too. And I also hear people go like, you guys don't talk about objection training with recruiting and that kind of thing. So we're going to cover a bit of all of it in the next 5-10 minutes here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back and forth. So Easton's going to throw them my way. I'm going to throw them back his way. And we're going to go until we run out of objections. So I don't know if you want to start, throw them at me, and then I'll go back at you. And hopefully this is helpful to everyone, whether you're dialing or recruiting or, in-home and not making the sales you want to make. So let you start.
Let's start on the phone, dude. So, hey, Zach, sorry, dude. I'm super busy tomorrow. I'm not going to be able to have time.
So on the phone, and I'm going to preface like the psychology behind it and then go into it. On the phone, the best thing to do is not to ignore people or not to be confrontational with people, but to kind of ignore the objection and work around it. So I go, hey, no problem at all. So are you working, retired, or disabled?
I'm working.
You're working, perfect. My office has me dispatched out your way all day tomorrow from about 6 a.m. till about midnight. What time are you and the wife typically back in home from work?
Oh, I get off at 5, so should be home 5:30ish.
Got it. What about the wife? Same time?
Yeah.
Cool. You guys have kids' soccer games or anything after that, or when you guys get home by 5:30, you're usually there for the night?
Yeah, no kids games this week. We're good.
No kids games. Okay, cool. I'll tell you what, I'm slammed tomorrow too. I have a 5 and a 5:30 already booked up, but I could squeeze you in at about 6. Should take me about 15 minutes, go through, see what you're eligible for, and leave those options with you. 6 o'clock work for you and the wife?
Yeah, that's fine.
So instead of just going and trying to argue with him and force it down his throat or go, well, let's try next Tuesday at 6, I basically just ignore. He said, I'm busy at this time. Just basically ignore it, figure out what his schedule is. And a lot of people think, we only work from 9 to 5. So let them know, hey, I can come over at 6, but you do it in a tactful way. So, all right, Easton, for you on phones, hey, we already took care of this, or we're not interested anymore. Same thing.
Yeah, you already took care of it. That's actually sweet, Zach. That'll make my job significantly easier. So with all the new people kind of getting up and running in the area, what I do, since I kind of manage the county, is I'm going to swing out just for a quick review. That way I can write all your guys' policy stuff down, make sure that you guys are good to go. If it's a review, it'll be super brief, like 5 minutes. Now, Zach, did you say you're still working a little bit, or are you guys full-time retired, or?
Retired.
Retired? Okay. Do you have any like doctor's appointments or anything scheduled in the morning?
No, I'm home in the morning.
Morning? Okay, no picking up grandkids or anything?
Nope.
Okay, so I've got to see about 14 people in your part of town tomorrow. I'll be right around the corner from you, like 8:30ish. Any reason you wouldn't be around with the wife?
No, we'll be there at 8.
Okay, cool. If you can just write me down, Easton, 6 feet, big nose guy. I'll be out there at 8.
Perfect. And same thing, right? You kind of ignored it, went back to it, and say, hey, no problem. Just trying to do my job. What about if they go, I'm not interested? Where you looked at it, I'm not interested anymore.
Hey, that's not a huge deal. Again, my job is just to do the eligibility part with you. When you sent this in, do you remember if you were originally just looking for you or your spouse?
Just for me, I think.
Okay, so I'm going to be out tomorrow. I've got to see about 14 people in your part of town. I'll just swing this by. It's brief eligibility. It maybe take me like 10 minutes, dude. So, again, my name is Easton. Is there any reason tomorrow you wouldn't be home around 8?
I'll be home at 8.
Okay, and that was kind of like a sped up, version of it. I would try to take back, again, learn the schedule, figure out. So this is a hard one, right? Like, hey, I'm no longer interested. That means they either got way overshown a lot of times for like premiums, or they got a decline because somebody put them in something they couldn't get, and they're frustrated. Mm-hmm. So I don't ever take it personally. And the same thing with like, I already got it done, dude. I'm not trying to go out and replace every piece of business, but if it's a bad piece of business, or they could be put in a better situation, or they're way underinsured for what they were really looking for, like I'm just looking to figure out if there's a hole. Mm-hmm. Review appointments and like not interested appointments, I like to double book them to be safe for sure.
Cool. All right, you got one.
So let's say that let's do an in-home one. Just so you know, Zach, ahead of time, like if it's not a good price, I'm not going to do anything. We don't usually make decisions first day, but I'm just not going to do it if it's too expensive, just as a heads up.
Perfect. So just so you know what my job is, we work with a whole bunch of different companies. I'm going to go through and ask you a couple minutes of questions regarding your health, finances, other insurance you may or may not have. Based on how you answer those, I'll be able to figure out what you'd be eligible for. Now, I'm not going to twist your arm and make you anything you don't need, but if everything makes sense, what the process would be is that we put in an application to the carrier. They tell us yes or no. And then we have 30 days. We'll start with something you can afford. Then you have 30 days to increase and get more coverage. But we'll start with something we know fits in your budget. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, as long as it's in the budget, I'm good.
And I think just being very assumptive. And the other thing is I think people kind of panic there. Just keep your tone the same, very matter-of-factly. And I let them know too, like, hey, if it's not something that makes sense for you, you don't need it. I'm not going to twist your arm. I'm here to help people, not put you in a position or take food off your table.
Yeah, I think that pretty much makes it really easy to get rid of the objection. So
let's say you get to the end, or someone sits down with them. You sit down with someone, and they go, "Hey, I'm just looking for numbers today."
Oh, perfect. So Zach, were you looking to get some quotes because you like don't have quite enough insurance now, or you don't have any, or you're just looking to leave a little something behind for the kids?
I don't have any insurance, but I just kind of wanted to know what it was going to cost me.
Got it. So when you were cost hunting, it was more because you don't have any insurance now and you just want to leave a little something behind for like funerals, or what were you on the hunt for?
Funerals and a little bit of debt.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. So this is what my job is. And then I just literally go and set the structure of what's going to take place. So people are only looking for quotes because they don't have any insurance or they don't have enough, or they're looking to leave behind a little something extra. So that's the easiest way for me to get over it. That's a nice little John Wetmore tip. I think if you can do those 3 on repeat, and I'll kind of do that circle until they give me a straight answer.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point, if you start fighting people right away, your job when you're sitting with someone is to relieve sales pressure, make them feel comfortable in the home, right? And let them know, like, my job is not to strong arm you, sell you, oversell you, anything like that. And you're just trying to figure out what they actually needed and why they needed it, right? So, go ahead.
So this is this might be kind of I'll give you like a mediumly harder one.
Okay.
Man, this is a hard one. I'll think of the one I was going to give you.
Okay.
The kids is always a really hard one. So, hey, just so you know, like I usually have to run stuff through my kids. So can you talk about how you would address that first?
Yeah. So I think with any objection, I think it's important. So like I know Easton, when he was in the field, kept a running notebook, just meaning whenever he ran across an objection, he would write it down and call a few people to get help with it. I did the same thing. So if you ever run into an objection, you get a lot. Don't go, well, this is just an objection I get. Like, crap, what should I do? The best way to overcome an objection is to prevent it, right? So that's when I got a lot, was I need to talk to my kids. So what I started doing at the beginning of the appointment is going, hey, before we dive into all this stuff, just out of respect, do you need to include, a payer or someone that makes your financial decisions for you or with you in this appointment, or are you okay making financial decisions on your own? I asked everyone that in the beginning. The other thing that I ask people in the beginning too is I always let them know, we're going to go through, we're going to submit an application, because I get to the end and people will be confused a lot. So that's why I told them that in the beginning. And I let them know I was going to shop around for them with a bunch of different carriers, because I got shopped around a lot. And then I let them know we are going to put something in their budget, because those were all the objections I got. So then if I say that and they get to the end, I need to run this by my kids, then I go, hey, no problem. So as soon as we get the application approved, whatever fits you and your budget, we're going to review this with your kids, because I want them to know that they can call me if something ever happens to you. And I'm happy to do that. But you said you make your own financial decisions. And if you call your kids and tell them, hey, I'm going to spend $100 a month on insurance, they might feel guilty and try to talk you out of it, knowing full well they do need the insurance. So why don't we put something in place for them? That way we know if you pass away, they're taken care of. And that way they don't try to talk you out of it because they feel guilty, because you've been such a great parent. They want to be a good kid to you. So let's put something in place. And instead of calling and asking for their permission, which you don't need to do, we call and go, hey, we put this policy in place. Here's how it works. Here's the coverage amount. Are you comfortable with it? And do you want to review it with my insurance rep and me?
Okay.
What do you get if you go, I want to think about it and check my budget and get back with you in a few days and see if there's something we want to do?
So I like to address that one just straight on the nose, because the think about it, like what is there to think about? Is it typically the price? That to me is always yes. If you do even like a pretty decent job in the home, I mean, you don't have to be perfect in every single scenario, but if anytime someone says I need to think about it, I'm gonna assume that's the price. And I haven't had a ton of success with like, hey, is it because you don't like me, or like what's that's just not works super great for me. Yeah. So I'll say, hey, listen, I'm going to be honest with you, Zach. The only time that anybody ever says they need to think about it after we go through this stuff is because I missed something major in your guys' budget, which it sounds like this is maybe just a little out of price. So is it fair to say, maybe we're overshooting a little bit what would be comfortable? Why don't we do this? Because my job is to get you approved at the bare minimum. So if it's tomorrow, that Mary's going to be okay, or the kids are going to be okay, or whoever. So why don't we just do this really fast? Let's do a little tweak adjustment to the price to make sure that you have something small in place to start. And then if you get approved, I'll come out and do a review, or we can do it over the phone or whatever works best for you, and figure out, hey, is it comfortable to add a little bit? Because I know you're looking for more based on the info you gave me, but this is supposed to be designed to hurt you, not to help you, not hurt you. So why don't we just make a quick shift down, and maybe that's $5,000 down, maybe it's 50 down. It'll depend on what you're showing. But I want to isolate what their primary concern is. And dude, it's almost always price. Mm-hmm. So if I can just hit it on the head and just say, listen, obviously I missed something. I'm really sorry, but we obviously know we need to do something. So let's just make a price adjustment and go from there.
Perfect.
I wouldn't I wouldn't mind hearing about like, hey, Zach, I'm just not really the type of guy that makes a decision day one. And I'm like 70s, right? But I'm not a decision maker. So just wanted you to know that up front.
Yeah. So the way this works is we put an application in. The insurance company either tells us now or later whether or not you get approved. And it sounds like you already made the decision and you need to do this. You're 70 years old. And with all respect, you don't have any insurance yet. So my job is to help advocate for your beneficiary, for your daughter, and make sure you have something in place for when you pass away so she doesn't have to pay for it. So what we're going to do today is whichever one of these three options, because I always show three options, whatever one of these three options is comfortable for you, and we know make sure it takes care of your funeral expenses, we're going to put that one in place. And then what I want you to do is think about and check your budget, because I'm taking away the think about and check your budget. I want you to think about and check your budget to see if there's more room in there where we can increase it to one of these policies that would leave her a little bit of legacy room. But at least this way we know, God forbid something happens to you. You know, you told me how important it was that we didn't leave her in a compromising position. We know, God forbid something happens to you tomorrow or next week or next year, that she's taken care of for the bare minimum. And then your job, your homework for me, Easton, is going to be to look at your budget and see if we can get a little bit more that would leave her a little bit of a legacy or something to remember you by. Does that sound good? So again, it's not really even overcoming. It's just kind of being like, no, we're going to go ahead and do it because you need it. And you asked me to advocate for you and your family.
Well, and I think just going back, you always go in and isolate. And that's a unique way of doing it too. Just like, hey, I'm going to address it and kind of like pass by it because it's not a true objection.
Right.
You know, like if you're 71 and uninsured, you've been thinking about it for a pretty decent chunk of time. So if you can take that back off the table, I think that's huge.
What about if people go, hey, if I saved $200 a month for the next 15 years, I would eventually save up what I would pay into this policy. And they're like 70 years old. So where they'd be like 95 or 100 when that time would come.
So, you know, and again, I can see how your immediate reaction is to be confrontational about that. But I just, you know, go back into, dude, it's insurance, especially it's a life insurance. Like the whole point of it is for if it's tomorrow. Like, hey, you know, I don't really like to what if with you, Bob, to be honest, because again, if it's tomorrow or 6 months or, you know, a full year or 6 years or whatever, like you're not going to have time to say, this is just your emergency if it's tomorrow, you know? So why don't you save 100 and put 100 into your insurance policy? That way you can still do both, but have your safety net, you know? That to me is an easy way around it. Like, let's divide and conquer. Then if you'd rather save the 200 or rather save the 300, why don't we just take a little portion of that and leverage the insurance company's money to be safe? And then I still want you to save on your own, but I'm assuming I'm over here because you haven't saved up all that money yet and you're looking for a little help. So why don't we do that? Let's just split it 150 here, however you want to do that part.
Got it.
I think that's the easiest way. So I'll get a recruiting objection for you, dude. One thing that we'll get a lot is the commission is really scary. That's the reason it took me so long to start. Like I was petrified of a commission, you know, no guarantees. Like I got to work and go get it. So if I was like, you know, Zach, I'm honestly a little bit worried about the commission thing. I don't know if that's something I'm ready to commit to.
Yeah. So commission-based sales is definitely gonna be scary. But the nice thing for me is knowing that if you put the numbers in your favor, it's not impossible to fail. People will definitely fail, but it's pretty hard to fail. Pretty hard to fail. So Easton, do you believe in yourself and your work ethic?
Yes.
Do you think that if the average person can write 10 to 15 policies a month and they work, you know, maybe 30, 40 hours a week, you're willing to work hard enough to, you know, even if you have to work harder than them to get the same result, are you willing to work harder than the average person?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Got it. Well, what I would commit to you is if you work really hard, you follow all the instructions the right way and it doesn't work out for you and you need help with leads, whatever, I'll help you out. As long as you're following all the instructions and doing all the right things. Is that a fair compromise on both ends?
Yeah.
And the nice thing here is, you know, while there's no minimum, there's no maximum too. So you eat what you kill. So the upside is a lot greater than just being stuck in exactly knowing what you're gonna get every single week. And honestly, what'll happen here is once you get good and proficient and understand numbers, you'll have a very consistent income and you'll be able to tweak it and increase it just by adding a few appointments here or there. So I argue you actually have a lot more control because you're in control of your income. No one can lay you off or furlough you. And you're an independent contractor, so you can work 100 hours a week or 10 hours a week and no one's your boss to tell you what to do.
So you're just trying to figure out, like, do you believe in you first?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like the baseline of where we got to start with pretty much everybody.
Yeah, if they don't believe in themselves at all, and I let them know too, if you believe in yourself, you work hard, you ask for questions, have a good attitude, you do all the things I ask you to do, and it doesn't work out, I'm not going to hang you out to dry. I'm going to be there to help you out. But on the other side of that, if you have a bad attitude, don't work at all, and blame the whole world for everything, I'm not going to be able to help you out from that situation. So if that's going to be you going into this, it's probably not going to be a good fit. But if you're the other guy, it'd be a great fit.
I love that.
Let's see. So let's do one more in-home one. You sit down with someone, the husband's there, the wife's not there, or vice versa, and they go, "Don't worry, I make all the decisions for my household." What do you do in that scenario?
Got it. So this is going to be the biggest tempt of all time because you're like, oh, I booked an appointment. I'm in here. I'm not going to say there's not one-offs, but usually by the time the numbers come around, they're going to go, oh, I didn't realize that it was going to be that. You know, a lot of times it's, I didn't know it was going to be that much. Like maybe they thought it was going to be $8 and it's 50, or they thought it was $20 and it's 100. Well, if I'd have known that, I would have, I got to run this by the wife to make sure it's all good. So even though they're the income earner, they make all the decisions. It's always going to, it's a one-legged sit is what they call it. So I would just say, hey, it's not a big deal. As you can imagine, this is always a household decision, and I'm sure Mary's going to have some questions for me. So why don't we do this? What time are you guys typically home from work tomorrow or Friday or so, whenever the rebook is? And I want to isolate that time. Like, is there a reason she wasn't here today? Because when we covered that yesterday, she was going to be here. So once I can relearn the schedule in person and explain, like, dude, this is a family thing. Like, she's in charge if you pass, right? Yeah. Okay, she's definitely going to need to be here to ask me questions. So maybe let's try tomorrow night. What time is she going to be home tomorrow?
Right.
Just move it to tomorrow, because it's 45 minutes. That's going to be frustrating if you do that on repeat.
Mm-hmm. And even if you sell those ones, more times than not, they'll cancel because the wife will come home and be like, wait, you did, or the husband will come home and be like, wait, you did what? You took out a policy that's $120 a month? Like, that doesn't sound right. Let's cancel it, right? And you're just kind of fighting uphill battle from there. So I always rebooked them. I'm like, I can't do this without the wife here. Yeah. I don't want you to get in trouble. You have to sleep on the couch. That's no fun for anyone. So,
let's do. I think this is a really fair question that maybe you can address with people, dude. So another recruiting one, because you're a maniac at recruiting. Zac, why do you think people fail? Because I'm not saying I don't believe in myself, but I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to fail, and there's so much upside to the company. I want to know what the catch is. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the catch? Why doesn't the whole world work here based on what you're telling me? Like, what's the catch?
Yeah, so people fail for a couple of reasons. One, they're inconsistent and they don't understand that chargebacks are going to happen. Actually, someone asked me this day, like, people only talk about the good. I'm like, dude, I tried to convince people out of working here a lot, because, if you're new and you don't know this, if you write 10 policies, 3 of them are probably going to cancel in the next 12 months. So a lot of people will start writing business. They'll start making some money. They'll take, a month off, and then they'll come back and they'll go, man, I'm in the hole with the carriers because I didn't keep working. And people get freaked out about that, but it'd be the same thing if you worked any job. If you made, you made whatever your salary was for a month at a job, and then you took the whole next month off, you'd be like, oh, I didn't get paid at all. Well, it's the same thing here, right? So number one is people are inconsistent. They're not good at being accountable to themselves. The second thing is people don't treat this like a business right away, and they make more money than they've ever made, and they don't reinvest it into leads right away. And the third thing is that people aren't willing to be coachable. They have a big ego, and they're not willing to take feedback on what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, most importantly. So if you can work consistently, be willing to invest in leads, not go and say, oh, I'm going to pay off all my credit card debt in one day. It's like, dude, you've had the credit card debt. It can wait a little bit. Let's keep building up, reinvesting in leads, keep making money. And then if you can be coachable, then you'll be fine. But if you miss some of those things, that's one of those 3 things is usually why people fail.
Yeah, I like the blunt honesty. I think it's the best way, because there's not a quote unquote trick to make money. Like, dude, you really do have to work hard and be coachable and like enjoy a little bit of that learning process in the beginning.
Right. And then I guess the last one, if you were to add a 4th one in there, is be accountable to your mistakes. Instead of going, oh, poor me, this situation happened, go, all right, this happened. Now, how do I fix it? Like, these are the rules of the game. Now, how do I play within the rules of the game instead of going, the game's stupid? Like, no, these are the rules. It's still a great game. I just have to play within them instead of keep breaking the rules. So let's see. You got any other ones, or you want to wrap there, you think?
Man, that was a bunch of really good ones. I like the recruiting ones a lot. The last one, I'll do one more, because I think it's a really hard. I'm just kind of curious on if you ever bumped into it. So the attorney, like, mm-hmm. Hey, I got to run this through my financial advisor, attorney, etc. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you kind of like break that down to get an understanding, but I'd be curious.
So for financial advisor, I go, hey, though their job is to advise you on where to put money in the market, go up, down, that sort of thing. And Easton, you don't ask your financial advisor. This is kind of a silly example, and I'll say that so they don't get offended. This is kind of a silly example, but when you spend $120 at the grocery store, you don't call your financial advisor and ask them for that, do you? No. Okay. And if their job was to get you insurance, they would have already got you insurance. This is what I specialize in, so I'm going to help you out with the insurance. And they're going to actually appreciate you took care of this, because you're going to have a tax-free death benefit paid to your beneficiaries, and that money you've saved can go elsewhere. So you don't need to go through your financial advisor or something like this. It's not something that requires an advisor license. It's kind of not really their game that they play in. Does that make sense? And then with the attorney, I've never had anyone ask me about the attorney thing, but I'd go, hey, I'm sure if you talk to your attorney, they're definitely going to want you to have something like this in place to make sure to offset, whatever debt you leave behind, make sure your funeral is paid for, your final expenses are paid for. But I think a lot of our market's not going to have, attorneys on payroll. And I would tell them the same thing. Like, my attorney loves that I have insurance. He actually wants me to have more insurance. So I think we should go ahead and get this in place for you today.
Love it. That's all I got.
I'll ask you one more. I'll ask you one recruiting one. So for people that are making decent money and want to build something that they can build passive income, but they're kind of scared of, not having that guarantee. How do you go over that with them? Because you kind of came from that corporate world, the corporate, car rental world.
Yeah, I always want people to get licensed and start playing around with it part-time, because, dude, this is not for everybody. So I explain that, like, hey, just so you know, the upside and the potential of this business is unlike anything I've ever seen. So why don't you just do this? Why don't you just get your license and kind of play around with it part-time on the weekends? And by play around with it, I mean, if you take it serious enough, you can kind of figure out what you can do and if you even like it. Because maybe the service-based sale or this specific, maybe you just don't like it, dude. It's not a big deal if you don't like it. But getting licensed and having that in your back pocket part-time, if we have another, crazy stuff that went down in 2020. They downsize companies, lay people off. Like, you've got an emergency license that can completely fix your loss of income overnight. So why don't you just get it, start part-time, and as you learn over the next couple of months, if you can do it, if you want to transition part-time, we can go from there. But I don't ever want someone to dip out of a $200,000-$400,000 a year job just overnight because they thought it sounded like a good idea. Yeah. I'm like, let's take it a little bit easier first, and then we can get into that phase when you're there. I don't know if you got some other stuff you throw in there, but
no, I agree. And I think if you're the manager perspective, you want to be doing the best thing by the people you're bringing on. So you want to make sure they can keep making money. Remember, they have families. Allow them to see it part-time. Don't put so much pressure on people. Now, if they're dead broke and have no money and nothing to lose, like I was when I started, it's fine, right? But if someone has, a mortgage and a couple car payments and a family, like I think of Eric Schmidt, started part-time, was working, making a multiple six-figure income at the car dealership, and worked there 50 hours a week and here 40 hours a week to make sure he could make it work before he just jumped off because he didn't want to leave his family out to dry. So I think that's a perfect point. I appreciate it. Hopefully this is helpful, guys. And as always, Easton and I are both here to help. If anyone ever needs anything, feel free to reach out, and keep killing it.